Hello and welcome to Bookity Book Book. I'm Ray and this is my review of The Casual Vacancy by J.K. Rowling. I don't think I can call this a Casual Vacancy review without somehow acknowledging Harry Potter. What I will say is that don't read this book because you liked Harry Potter. Read this book because you liked J.K. Rowling writing Harry Potter. Because if you just like the books and the fantasy and the characterisation of Harry Potter, you couldn't really go more opposite with this book. It's a book based on stereotypical characters which we're all familiar with, and it's firmly based on the real world. I didn't really know what to expect when starting this book. I knew that it was going to be just character driven and there wasn't really going to be a lot of explosive plot lines. And I knew that it somehow focused around a council election, but I was pretty much in the dark, and I quite liked that because I didn't have any pre-made assumptions before I started this book. J.K. Rowling's writing style doesn't go down in any quality. It's still fantastic. It's almost as if you're reading a book based firmly in Privet Drive, and she's just sarcastic all the way through, like she is in Harry Potter. There's not much warmth from the narrator. It's mostly wit and sarcasm, and the descriptions you get through that are good. The tension in this book starts off pretty much non-existent, but then as the book progresses you feel that it builds and it builds and it builds, and then there's probably a point about 100 pages before the end where you can tell that everything is stretched so tight that it's just gonna be explosive when the tension is released, and it is explosive. A lot of things happen at the end and it's rather alarming at how fast everything happens at the end, considering about 400 pages or so that it's taken to build everything up. But I quite liked that you really got to love the characters before you really knew what was going to happen to them, and you didn't love them because of what happened to them. You loved them because they were themselves. A lot of people have criticised this book for its use of swearing and its sexual content, but to be honest, you're going to get swearing in an adult book. It wasn't excessive, it wasn't unpleasant, it was just there. And the sexual content, it was a little bit weird in places, but it was never over the top, and it didn't put me off reading the book. It was just there. Having said all those good things about the book, however, I've got to be honest, the book did have some flaws, and I struggled with it, which I was not expecting to do. For the first, I'd say, 200, 300 pages, it's really hard to keep track of who the characters are, and I know a lot of people have given up on the book in those pages because you're getting introduced to these people and they're referring to other people who you're not really sure about, and then you have another narrator then who's referring to their group of friends who have no idea about, and there's probably about 50 characters or so mentioned and then about 10 narrators, so it's hard to keep track of who the people are. I found that probably about the 300 page mark though was about a turning point for me with the book, because I then managed to get into the swing of who people were, and I managed to identify certain character traits with each person, and then from that point onwards I started getting into it and enjoying it a lot more because I was getting through it faster and things weren't slowing down, they were just speeding up, and then by the end I was really addicted to it, and I felt for what fate each of the characters had, because not all of the characters have a happy ending, and the ones that you root for secretly, no, they just get chewed up. I was not expecting to struggle with this book, and I'm glad I stuck with it because it was worth it. So if you are struggling with the book, stick to it because it's worth it in the end. But I think if you're expecting a book like Harry Potter, don't, because you won't like it. For some people, once you get to the good part at the end, it's not worth the struggle that you've had to get there in getting to know all the characters and identify with the plot. As a whole, for me, this book was probably about 4 stars. It wasn't perfect, but I liked it by the end, and I was really getting into who everybody was and what they wanted to be. I think that it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, so if you're not sure about getting it, don't. It's not a book which you're going to remember all of your life, and you're not going to remember many quotes from it, but I think it does give you a different perspective on the way you see things, because so often you see the media present things so one-sided that you don't get to see how the other side of the argument really looks like. And I think this book, good for doing that, but it's not good for entertainment purposes. And I was disappointed at the beginning, but I really liked it by the end. So overall, I say it was a good book, but not one I'm going to reread. That pretty much sums up this whole book. It's about giving you perspectives that you don't normally have on issues that everybody can relate to, and you get out of it what you put in.